The courtroom is a cathedral of cold marble and darker intentions. Rain streaks down the tall windows behind the judge's bench, casting shadow patterns across mahogany wood and the scales of justice that seem, somehow, to be tipping the wrong direction. Isabella Moreau sits at the defense table alone. No team of attorneys beside her, no strategic lineup of power. Just her. A woman in a cream linen dress that cost less than her ex-husband's monthly cigar collection. Her hands rest folded on the table with the kind of stillness that suggests she has already made peace with whatever comes next. Across from her, Victor Ashford sits like a king on a contested throne. His attorney, Richard Pembroke, arranges documents with theatrical precision, each paper a weapon meant to wound. They speak in low tones, occasionally glancing at Isabella with the unmistakable expression of predators who have already tasted blood. The courtroom is not crowded, but those present are carefully selected. Financial analysts, court reporters, a handful of journalists who smell a story of a woman being systematically dismantled. They have already written the narrative in their minds. They have already crowned the victor. Isabella Moreau is a supporting character in her own tragedy. Judge Margaret Sullivan enters with the weight of authority, her robes like storm clouds. She settles into her seat and adjusts her glasses, scanning the courtroom with the practiced eye of someone who has witnessed 1,000 divorces, each one a small death. "This court is in session," the bailiff announces, "in the matter of Ashford versus Moreau regarding division of assets and spousal support." Victor leans back in his chair, supremely confident. His hand rests on the table like a man who has already won. Cassandra Voss sits in the gallery behind him, her diamond ring catching light, her expression one of delicious anticipation. She has been waiting for this moment, the moment when Isabella Moreau would be publicly humiliated, financially decimated, and rendered utterly powerless. Isabella does not look at any of them. Her eyes remain forward, calm as still water. Her breathing is measured. She appears almost fragile against the aggressive architecture of the courtroom, like a single candle flame that the wind will surely extinguish. No one, absolutely no one, suspects that this woman is anything more than what she appears to be, a former trophy wife, now discarded, with no resources and no fight left in her. Everyone is about to be catastrophically wrong. Richard Pembroke rises from his chair with the slow, deliberate movement of a man about to perform a devastating symphony. His shoes click against marble floors with each step toward the podium. Each click is intentional. Each click announces dominance. "Your Honor," he begins, his voice carrying the polished veneer of absolute certainty. "We stand before you today with a straightforward matter. My client, Mr. Victor Ashford, seeks equitable division of marital assets and seeks to clarify the terms of spousal support for Ms. Moreau, who has demonstrated a concerning inability to support herself during our marriage." He pauses. He lets that statement hang in the air like poison gas. Ms. Moreau was a homemaker, a supportive presence in Mr. Ashford's life while he built his considerable real estate portfolio, his investment ventures, and established himself as one of the region's most successful entrepreneurs. During their 13-year marriage, she contributed nothing of financial consequence. Isabella does not flinch. Her hands remain folded. Cassandra leans forward in the gallery, her manicured fingernails glinting. She whispers something to a woman beside her, probably something cruel, probably something meant to be overheard. The woman laughs. The laugh sounds like breaking glass. "We have documented Mr. Ashford's assets," Pembroke continues, gesturing towards stacks of papers. "His commercial real estate holdings, valued at approximately $47 million. His investment portfolio, consisting of tech stocks and venture capital interests, worth $23 million. His personal assets, including vehicles, art collections, and his primary residence on Crescent Point, which alone is valued at $8.9 million. He turns now, directly toward Isabella. It is a calculated move, meant to diminish her, meant to make her feel the weight of her own poverty in contrast to his client's wealth. Ms. Moreau, during these 13 years, earned no income. She possesses no business licenses, no professional credentials of any consequence, no savings account of significance. According to our investigations, her personal net worth is approximately $180,000, primarily from her modest family inheritance, which has nothing to do with this marriage. A journalist in the gallery leans over to her colleague. They are writing notes. They are already composing the headline, "Trophy Wife Left with Nothing." Judge Sullivan's expression remains neutral, but there is something in her eyes, a slight narrowing, that suggests she is beginning to form opinions. Pembroke's performance is, undeniably, impressive. "We propose," Pembroke announces, "that Ms. Moreau receive a settlement of $2.5 million, a generous sum, we believe, given her total contribution to this marriage. Furthermore, we suggest that spousal support be limited to 5 years, at $40,000 monthly. After that, Ms. Moreau will need to secure employment appropriate to her skill set." Appropriate to her skill set. The phrase is a knife wrapped in silk. Victor allows himself the smallest smile. It is the smile of a man who has already begun spending the money he will keep. Cassandra's hand touches his shoulder in the gallery, a gesture of possession, of victory shared. Isabella raises her eyes for the first time. She looks directly at Judge Sullivan. Her expression contains no anger, no fear, no desperation. It contains something else entirely, a profound and bottomless knowing. Judge Sullivan notices this. She pauses, studying Isabella's face with sudden, genuine curiosity. Something in that moment shifts, imperceptibly, like the first subtle movement of tectonic plates before an earthquake. But Pembroke is not finished. He returns to his seat, and Victor's legal team presents document after document, bank records showing his earnings, property deeds establishing his ownership, investment statements proving his net worth. The mountain of evidence grows higher and higher, designed to bury any argument Isabella might possibly make. The courtroom settles into an uncomfortable silence. The rain continues its assault on the windows, and Isabella Moreau sits in perfect, dignified stillness, waiting for her moment. What no one in this courtroom knows, what Victor himself does not know, is that Isabella Moreau has spent the last 7 years building something extraordinary in the shadows. The transformation began quietly, almost by accident. 6 months before she finally decided to leave Victor, Isabella had inherited a small investment from her grandmother's estate. Not the $180,000 mentioned in court documents, that was real. But alongside it, her grandmother had left something far more valuable, a collection of letters. Personal letters detailing a network of philanthropic organizations, family trusts, and business investments that had been quietly accumulating wealth for 3 generations. Isabella had discovered she was the legitimate heir to something her grandmother had always intended to remain hidden from public scrutiny. With that knowledge came access. Access to dormant trust accounts, access to foundation boards, access to investment portfolios that predated her marriage to Victor by decades, access to real estate holdings scattered across 3 continents, quietly appreciating in value. Her grandmother, a brilliant woman born in a world that did not allow women to possess power openly, had created a structure, a system of shell companies, charitable foundations, and trusts that allowed her descendants to hold genuine wealth while appearing unremarkable to the outside world. Isabella had spent 7 years, the same 7 years she appeared to be a broken, forgotten wife, quietly activating these dormant accounts. She had hired attorneys in Luxembourg, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands. She had engaged financial advisors who answered to no one but her. She had quietly purchased properties, invested in emerging markets, and built an empire so carefully hidden that even her own ex-husband's forensic accountants could never have found it. She had become the silent majority shareholder in 3 multinational corporations. She controlled a $340 million venture capital fund. She owned outright, through various shell entities, 14 luxury properties across the world's most exclusive locations. Her actual net worth was approximately $1.7 billion. $1,700 million. And no one, absolutely no one, knew. Not her ex-husband, not his legal team, not the judge, not the journalists in the gallery, not even her closest friends suspected. This was not luck. This was not inheritance in any conventional sense. This was legacy. This was a bloodline that understood power and understood most critically that the most dangerous power is power that no one suspects you possess. Isabella had chosen to appear ordinary, deliberately. She had worn simple dresses because luxury attracts scrutiny and leaves evidence. She had claimed homemaker status because humility is the perfect invisibility cloak. She had allowed Victor to feel superior because arrogant men stop investigating women they have already decided are beneath them. For 7 years, she had been two different people existing in the same body. By day, she was the discarded wife, the forgotten homemaker, the woman Victor bragged about leaving for someone younger, someone more impressive, someone real. By night, she was something else entirely. She sat in conference calls with CEOs and board members. She approved multi-million-dollar acquisitions. She directed philanthropic efforts that were changing communities across the developing world. She had become a silent architect of industries, a shadow partner in tech startups that were reshaping how the world did business. Her legal name was Isabella Moreau, but she also held legitimate ownership stakes under 3 other carefully constructed identities. She had created a business empire so sophisticated that Harvard Business School had written a case study about the emergence of her largest company, published under the name of her trusted financial advisor so that no one connected it to her. This was not impulsiveness. This was not rage disguised as strategy. This was something far more elegant and far more devastating. Isabella had orchestrated every detail of her divorce from the very beginning. She had allowed Victor's infidelity. She had encouraged his arrogance. She had played the victim because she understood that victims are invisible, and invisible people can move freely. She had hired the best divorce attorney money could buy, but not as her representative. She had hired them to advise the opposition. She had paid them millions to offer Victor legal counsel she knew would lead him directly toward overconfidence. Everything about this moment had been carefully, exquisitely arranged. The rain continued outside the courtroom windows. Judge Sullivan shifted in her seat, and Isabella Moreau sat perfectly still, knowing that in approximately 47 minutes she would reveal a truth that would make every person in this room question everything they believed about power, appearance, and the nature of invisibility. Victor Ashford stands during the lunch recess, shaking hands with his attorney like they have just won a war. His confidence has evolved beyond arrogance. It has become something almost religious in its certainty. "This is almost embarrassing," he says to Pembroke, his voice loud enough for nearby court observers to hear. "She came with nothing. No legal representation, no strategy, just nothing." He straightens his tie, the blood-red silk tie that cost more than Isabella's entire wardrobe combined. "How much longer do you think this takes?" he asks, already checking his Rolex. "I have dinner reservations at Chez Noir tonight. Cassandra wants to celebrate." Pembroke smiles with the satisfaction of a man who has never experienced defeat. "Another hour, perhaps 90 minutes. The judge will deliberate briefly. Then she'll award us everything we've requested, possibly more. There is literally nothing she can do, Victor. She has no evidence, no documentation, no support. She is the definition of powerless." They walk toward the courthouse cafeteria, and Victor nods to several people he knows, other wealthy businessmen, an investment banker, a local television personality. Each acknowledgement is a small victory. Each greeting reinforces his status as a man of significance in this city. In the gallery, Cassandra approaches Isabella during the recess. It is a deliberate move, meant to dominate, meant to assert ownership. "You know," Cassandra says, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I almost feel sorry for you." Almost. She circles Isabella slowly, like a predator assessing wounded prey. 13 years, Cassandra continues. 13 years of marriage, and you couldn't keep a man like Victor interested. No wonder he needed something younger, something more exciting. Isabella does not respond. She does not even turn her head. "I'm moving into the Crescent Point house next month," Cassandra announces, a diamond ring deliberately angled to catch maximum light. "We're completely renovating it. Victor said your taste in interior design was terribly dull. We're bringing in a team from Milan." Cassandra laughs, a sound like ice cracking. "You know what the saddest part is?" she continues, leaning closer. "You could have fought harder. You could have hired better lawyers. You could have done something. But instead, you just gave up. And honestly, that's just pathetic." She walks away, and Isabella hears her join Victor in the hallway, hears their laughter echo off marble corridors. Judge Sullivan observes all of this from her chambers. She is reading the case documents again, something nagging at her, some almost imperceptible detail that feels wrong. She looks at the photograph of Isabella included in the case file. The woman in the photograph has the same serene expression as the woman in the courtroom, calm, patient, as if waiting for something. Judge Sullivan makes a note. She writes one word: investigate. But the afternoon proceedings are about to begin. There is no time now. Soon enough, she thinks, the truth will emerge. It always does. She has no idea how completely wrong she is about what that truth will be. The courtroom reassembles after lunch. Rain continues its relentless percussion against the windows. Isabella is offered the opportunity to speak before final arguments, and she stands slowly, deliberately, with the kind of grace that suggests she has nothing left to lose because she has already won something invisible. Victor leans back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. He is literally smirking. Cassandra's hand is on his arm, and they exchange a glance. The glance of two people who are watching a condemned prisoner walk to the gallows. "Ms. Moreau," Judge Sullivan says, almost gently, "would you like to present any final statements or arguments?" Isabella approaches the podium. She places her hands on the surface and looks directly at her ex-husband. Her eyes contain something that makes his smirk falter, just slightly. "I have one question," she says, her voice quiet but acoustically perfect in the silent courtroom. "Your Honor, in a divorce proceeding, is a party required to disclose all assets before settlement?" "Of course," Judge Sullivan responds. "Complete financial transparency is mandatory." "And if a party has failed to disclose assets, if they have hidden assets, concealed properties, or undisclosed income streams, that would constitute perjury and fraud, correct?" Victor's attorney stands. "Objection. Argumentative." But Judge Sullivan raises her hand. She is suddenly acutely interested. "I'll allow it," the judge says. "Ms. Moreau, what is the purpose of this line of questioning?" "I want to establish the parameters of truth before I say what I'm about to say," Isabella responds, "because what I am about to reveal will require the court to understand that deception carries consequences." She pauses. She looks at Victor directly. "You never investigated me," she says calmly. "You never thought I was worth investigating. You assumed that a woman who stayed home, who supported your career, who never challenged you publicly, was incapable of building anything, hiding anything, becoming anything." Victor's face begins to change. The smirk dissolves. "You are about to discover," Isabella continues, "that you have made the most catastrophic error of your life. You have underestimated someone so completely, so thoroughly, that you have rendered your entire legal strategy obsolete." "Enough," Pembroke demands, standing. "Your Honor, this is theatrical nonsense." "Sit down, Mr. Pembroke," Judge Sullivan commands. There is something in her voice that makes everyone obey immediately. She looks at Isabella. "What do you have to present to this court?" Isabella nods to the courtroom doors. She has been waiting for this moment. She has orchestrated every detail to lead exactly here. "I have documentation," Isabella says quietly, "that establishes my actual net worth, my hidden assets, and the complete financial fraud that has been perpetrated in these proceedings. I also have evidence of additional criminal conduct on the part of my ex-husband that extends far beyond this divorce." The courtroom goes silent. Victor's face, for the first time in the entire proceeding, displays genuine fear. The courtroom doors open. Two people enter, a woman in an elegant charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase, and a man in glasses with folders containing documents that seem to multiply as they approach the bench. "Your Honor," the woman announces, "I am Margaret Chen, Senior Counsel for the Moreau Family Trust. I have been authorized to present evidence regarding the complete financial status of my client, Isabella Moreau, as well as to file formal charges regarding Mr. Ashford's concealment of assets and fraudulent statements made in these proceedings." Judge Sullivan's eyes widen with the beginning of understanding that she is about to witness something extraordinary. Margaret Chen approaches the bench and begins distributing documents with the precision of someone who has done this before. But these are not simple documents. These are architectural blueprints of an empire. First, Margaret says, I want to establish the historical foundation. Isabella Moreau is the direct descendant of the Fontaine family, one of Europe's oldest philanthropic dynasties. Her great-grandmother, Constance Fontaine, established a series of trusts in 1962 that were specifically designed to remain hidden from public scrutiny and from the inheritance laws of multiple countries. Judge Sullivan leans forward, genuinely shocked. These trusts, Margaret continues, have been accumulating wealth for over 6 decades. They include real estate holdings, investment portfolios, and controlling interests in several multinational corporations. She displays a chart. The numbers are almost incomprehensible. The total current value of these assets is approximately $1.7 billion. The courtroom implodes. Not literally, but spiritually, emotionally, the entire structure of understood reality shatters. Victor stands up. This is impossible. I had her investigated. I had forensic accountants examine her finances. You examined the accounts you were meant to examine, Margaret responds coolly. The assets in question are held through entities in Luxembourg, Singapore, the Cayman Islands, and the British Virgin Islands. They were specifically designed to be invisible to casual investigation. Your forensic accountants were not looking for a woman with $1.7 billion. They were looking for a woman with $180,000. She looks directly at Isabella, and there is profound respect in her eyes. My client, Margaret continues, deliberately chose not to disclose these assets. She has the legal right to maintain separation between her personal trust assets and her marital assets. However, you, Mr. Ashford, do not have that right. Margaret produces another document, and this one, somehow, seems even more damaging. Mr. Ashford, while claiming to be worth approximately $70 million in this proceeding, has actually concealed an additional $43 million in offshore accounts. We have documentation, bank records, and wire transfers proving that you have actively hidden assets from this court. Pembroke is on his feet. Your Honor, this is purely circumstantial. It is federal crime, Margaret interrupts. Perjury in divorce proceedings, tax fraud, money laundering. I have already filed complaints with the FBI, the IRS, and the District Attorney's Office. The rain outside the windows seems to intensify, or perhaps it is simply that everyone is suddenly aware of it, aware that the world is literally changing around them as they sit in this courtroom. Judge Sullivan's expression has transformed from skepticism to genuine gravity. Continue, the judge says. Margaret nods and displays another set of documents. I want to be very clear about something, Margaret says. Ms. Moreau did not disclose her assets not because she was deceptive, but because she was strategic. She understood that her ex-husband would attempt to claim rights to assets he was not entitled to under law. She understood that by remaining quiet, she was establishing absolute proof of his fraudulent behavior, his attempt to conceal his own assets while demanding division of hers. She allows that to settle into the room. Furthermore, Margaret continues, we have evidence that Mr. Ashford's relationship with Miss Cassandra Voss was not merely an affair, but part of a coordinated effort to defraud the marital estate. All eyes turn to Cassandra, who has gone white. She stands and attempts to leave the courtroom, but a court officer gently but firmly prevents her. Ms. Voss received approximately $500,000 in wire transfers from Mr. Ashford's accounts during the 6 months before Mrs. Moreau filed for divorce. These transfers appear to be compensation for services related to financial concealment and fraudulent statements. Cassandra's face crumbles. She looks at Victor with the expression of someone who has just realized they have been used as disposable. I also want to address something, Margaret says, turning to face Isabella directly. My client has been remarkably generous in her response to this situation. She has instructed me to inform the court that she is willing to accept a settlement that is significantly less than what she is legally entitled to. Isabella nods slightly. Given Mr. Ashford's fraud and asset concealment, Ms. Moreau would be entitled to his complete financial disclosure, his entire documented net worth, plus recovery for punitive damages. That would amount to approximately $180 million. Instead, She is requesting a settlement of $5 million, with the provision that the hidden $43 million in concealed assets be submitted to tax authorities and the FBI for full investigation. Judge Sullivan sets down her pen. She looks at Isabella with an expression that contains admiration, shock, and profound respect. "Ms. Moreau," the judge says slowly, "you are claiming you do not want the maximum settlement you are entitled to?" Isabella stands. She approaches the bench with the serene grace of a woman who has already made peace with her choices. "Your Honor," she says, "I am not interested in destroying Mr. Ashford financially. I am interested in justice. I am interested in establishing that deception has consequences. I am interested in demonstrating that the women we assume are powerless may, in fact, be the most powerful people in the room." She pauses. "I never needed his money," she continues quietly. "I never needed his validation. I never needed this divorce to establish my worth. What I needed was for the truth to be undeniable. I needed everyone in this courtroom to understand that they made an assumption, that I was a powerless woman, without ever bothering to investigate whether that assumption was accurate." She looks at Victor. "You taught me something valuable," she says. "You taught me that arrogance blinds people. You taught me that people see what they expect to see, and they dismiss what challenges their expectations. I used that lesson. I built an empire while you built a scandal." Victor's face has become something barely human. He attempts to speak, but no words emerge. His attorney is already making calls, already attempting damage control that will prove impossible. Judge Sullivan strikes her gavel. "This court finds in favor of the respondent, Ms. Isabella Moreau. The settlement terms are as follows. Ms. Moreau is awarded $5 million in marital assets, and Mr. Ashford is ordered to immediately disclose all concealed assets. Furthermore, I am recommending to the district attorney that formal charges be filed for fraud, perjury, and asset concealment." She looks at Pembroke. "Counsel, your client has committed crimes within this courtroom. I trust you will immediately advise him of his legal rights and his right to counsel." The courtroom transforms. What was, moments ago, a space of assumed victory becomes a space of catastrophic collapse. Victor Ashford sits down in his chair as though his legs can no longer support him. His hands are shaking. The blood-red tie that announced his confidence now seems to announce his shame. Cassandra attempts to contact someone, her phone frantically pressed to her ear, before security escorts her from the courtroom. She is crying now, no longer the confident mistress, but a woman whose choices have disintegrated in the span of 90 seconds. Richard Pembroke is whispering to Victor, his expression grim. The certainty that characterized his morning performance has been replaced by the dawning horror of understanding that he has been maneuvered into filing legal documents based on fraudulent information provided by his own client. He looks at Isabella with something between awe and rage, the expression of someone who has recognized they have been outplayed by an intellect far superior to their own. Journalists in the gallery are furiously taking notes. The story they came to cover, the story of a discarded wife losing everything, has transformed into the story of the century. The headline is already rewriting itself in their minds. "Hidden heiress destroys ex-husband in shocking courtroom reversal." Judge Sullivan calls for order as the courtroom descends into controlled chaos. "This proceeding is adjourned," the judge announces. "Bailiff, Mr. Ashford is not to leave this courthouse. The district attorney's office will be arriving within the hour to discuss these matters further." The emotional architecture of this moment is extraordinary. For those who came expecting to witness a woman's humiliation, what they have witnessed instead is the revelation of hidden strength. The courtroom becomes a space of reckoning. Isabella stands quietly at the defense table as her legal team surrounds her, no longer a woman alone, but a woman surrounded by the visible evidence of her power. She does not look at Victor. She does not need to. She has already seen what she needed to see. The moment when absolute certainty transformed into absolute despair. The moment when his arrogance became his weapon turned against him. Other lawyers in the gallery are already calculating. This case will become landmark legal precedent. Universities will teach this proceeding. Business schools will dissect the strategy employed by a woman who understood the psychology of expectations so completely that she was able to manipulate multiple sophisticated minds simultaneously. A court officer approaches Victor, reading him his rights. The words sound strange, almost surreal, in a courtroom where moments ago this man was confidently planning his celebration dinner. His attorney has already started making contingency plans. Criminal defense, plea negotiations, damage control. The empire Victor Ashford believed himself to be building is crumbling in real time. The journalists approach Isabella as she leaves the courtroom, but her legal team creates a protective barrier. She walks past them with the same serene dignity that characterized her silence during the morning proceedings. "Ms. Moreau," one reporter calls out. "How does it feel to have been vindicated?" Isabella pauses. She turns slightly, and there is something almost merciful in her expression. "I was never seeking vindication," she says quietly. "I was seeking truth. Vindication is what happens to those who were wronged. Truth is what happens to those who were honest." She walks toward the elevators, and everyone watches her go. The woman they thought was powerless has just revealed herself as the most powerful person in that courtroom, not because of her wealth, though that is extraordinary, but because of her clarity. She knew exactly who she was. Everyone else was still discovering it. In the courtroom behind her, Victor Ashford sits with his hands covering his face. His attorney paces, phone pressed to his ear, already beginning the long process of damage control that will define the next decade of his client's life. And Isabella Moreau steps into the elevator, the doors closing on the world she is leaving behind, moving toward a world that has always belonged to her. Would your life change if you discovered someone you underestimated was secretly more powerful than you could imagine? What assumptions are you making about people based on their appearance or their silence? The months that follow the courtroom revelation are a symphony of Isabella's quiet ascent. She does not celebrate publicly. She does not grant interviews or make statements. Instead, she simply moves into the life that was always meant to be hers. She is photographed at a charity gala in Monaco, where she announces a $50 million commitment to establishing educational scholarships for underprivileged women across Europe. The announcement is made with the same serene tone she employed in courtroom silence. The impact, however, is seismic. She opens an office in Manhattan, not a corporate office, but a think tank focused on female entrepreneurship and economic empowerment. Within 6 months, the organization has helped 234 women launch successful businesses with a combined value exceeding $1.2 billion. Victor Ashford's trial begins and becomes the highest-profile financial crime case in recent memory. His conviction is inevitable. The evidence Margaret Chen presented was meticulous, comprehensive, and absolutely devastating. He receives a sentence of 8 years, minimum security, with the additional requirement that he forfeit the hidden $43 million plus substantial penalties. Cassandra Voss cooperates with prosecutors and receives immunity in exchange for testimony. She becomes a cautionary tale, the woman who mistook a man's wealth for a woman's poverty and lost everything by making that calculation. But Isabella does not follow these stories. She does not need to. Their collapse was never about revenge for her. It was about establishing a principle. She establishes the Moreau Foundation, publicly announcing her philanthropic agenda for the first time. The foundation commits $500 million annually to causes aligned with her vision: women's education, economic empowerment, access to justice for those who cannot afford it. She publishes a memoir, not to rehash the courtroom battle, but to establish a philosophical framework for invisible power. The book becomes a bestseller, taught in business schools alongside case studies of her divorce settlement. Her closing words become a mantra for women worldwide. Power is not determined by visibility. The most transformative power is the power you exercise while the world is looking in the wrong direction. Do not prove your strength by shouting. Prove it by building something so magnificent that the world is forced to acknowledge it. And do it quietly, patiently, with absolute certainty in your own worth. She purchases the Crescent Point property that was once her marital home. She does not live there. Instead, she transforms it into a women's shelter and community center, a space where women escaping difficult situations can learn job skills and rebuild their lives. Isabella does not remarry. She does not need to. She has something far more fulfilling: the absolute certainty that she is exactly who she was meant to be. The woman everyone underestimated is now the woman everyone watches, not with envy or resentment, but with profound respect. The greatest power is not the power others see, it is the power you build while they are looking away. What would you accomplish if you did not need anyone's permission or approval? Would you be someone different if no one was watching? This is Isabella Moreau's truth. This is her story. And now, the question she leaves with you is not about her power, but about yours. You are not as powerless as others believe, and those around you are not as powerful as they appear. What strength are you hiding? What are you building in silence that the world has not yet discovered?